Welcome back to the Storm Cellar, everybody. Brad is here, Ray is here, and we're joined by a Caniac we want to speak to, Mike Dickinson. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great, but not nearly as well as Mike, because Mike's getting ready to have himself some fun tonight. He's going to enjoy it. Mike.
Yeah, a little dinner with the girlfriend and friends, and then we're going to see Ben Folds in downtown Raleigh. So going 90s nostalgic for some music tonight.
Nice. So if you can't be at a Hurricanes game, why not go to a concert with Ben Folds, right?
Yeah, and being a North Carolina boy as he is, he typically puts on a really good show here. So it's should be a really good time. It's just he and a piano telling stories and playing music. So it should be a good time.
It's going to be outstanding. We don't want to keep you from it. We're going to just kind of dive right in. And normally we would dive right into your story, but the world keeps turning around us. And while it's turning, news is breaking. And Brad, some news out of Chicago this afternoon.
Jeremy Colleton and two of his assistants, both Thomas Mitel, I think, and Sheldon Brookbank, are out. They're bringing up Derek King from Rockford to coach the team here in the interim, but all three of those coaches are out. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. We talked about maybe it was a week or so ago about the players had grabbed the clipboard, were designing their own power play while he just kind of stood there with his hands in his pockets. Not a good look. Probably not a sign things are going well for your franchise, but it is official. He is out in Chicago. What do you guys think?
I tell you what, I was at the game. I was at the Canes Chicago game. Was it last Friday night? I guess it was. And Chicago's terrible. They at the time, of course, they were going through the whole COVID thing with a lot of their players, but I mean, their goaltending isn't very good. Fleury wasn't in net. He looks like he's lost a step this year already. They needed a hard reset. So, I mean, I guess that this is the way to do it. You can't fire the players. So I guess that you got to fire the coach first.
And, to me, it just, like I said, that example that we gave, it looks like he's lost the room. They're using an interim coach very quickly. Can you guys think of any coach who would want to dive into that mess, or is Chicago going to just go with an interim coach for the rest of the season and hope that over time they can have their own hard reset, kind of like you guys had suggested? Like, I can't imagine anyone wanting to jump in right away. And I don't know that there's anyone out there that could recapture the room to salvage this season, even though it's only the season is only 9 games in for them, 10 tops, I think, right? So there's time to perhaps salvage the team, but man, oh man, like you mentioned about Fleury, he is not, I mean, some of the goals that he's allowing are very, very suspect. You know what I mean? He's not the Fleury that we've seen in the past, and that has burned, frankly, the Caniacs mightily in the past as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a tough situation too, because you've got Kane on big money, you've got Tays on big money. Yes, they were able to unload Duncan Keith. If I'm not mistaken, Fleury's a free agent after this year. I could be wrong about that, but they've still got some contracts, and they haven't drafted very well. We can really thank them for Teuvo Teravainen, because we got him for really nothing. And they could have really built around a player like Teuvo, but instead, they wanted to get rid of that Bickle contract. So, they gave us Teuvo, and they literally gave him to us. They just have been horribly mismanaged for so many years now that they really got to start all over. But I don't know if you can, as far as, what the contracts look like, as far as no movement clauses and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, and to go back to your point, Ray, a couple of names have been tossed around, leading up to this firing today. Rick Tocchet and John Tortorella are two names that have been tossed around for this job. But if I'm either of those guys, do I want that job? I mean, there's rebuilding, and then there's rebuilding.
Well, can you imagine Torts in that locker room? I know Mike laughs immediately, and rightfully so. Like, Torts is as hard-nosed as they get. And can you imagine him being there answering questions in Chicago with the reporters. I mean, I can guarantee you right now, none of the journalists in Chicago want torts in that locker room because their job becomes infinitely harder.
Not only that too, but you got to remember Tockett with that whole problem that Arizona had, where they got stripped with all of the draft picks and all. You got to remember who the coach was at the time. It was Rick Tockett.
That's right.
So he's not the cleanest guy on the planet either. So I'm not so sure how he would fit in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
They are in a lot of trouble. And Brad, I don't even know. The fact that those two names even comes up is surprising and kind of a reach, I think, if they're just spitballing names out there.
Yeah, I think some of it's just, who would the media like to see there?
Yeah.
And I know from one perspective, and I agree with you, I think Torts being in there would be, in some ways, it would make the media's job a lot harder because he's going to be Torts, right? But at the same
Yep.
time, as kind of, pseudo media in our role, I would enjoy it because if nothing else, there'd be something to write about every day. We'd have things to talk about because he's going to tell you like it is. And you may or may not like it. And that sometimes has gotten him in trouble, but you're going to know where you stand if he's in charge up there.
Yeah, that's go ahead, Mike.
He'll single somebody out in a minute too on his team. He that's the thing with him. He when he specifically, I remember with the Rangers, he would go at it with guys. That big market in New York City and Tortorella didn't get along very well at all, and he lost that locker room pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken. So I would run far from that guy. If I were them, I would literally just go with the interim deal the rest of the season, and then from there, see how it works out. I mean, I don't know much about what their roster depth is looking like, but if this coach is coming up from their AHL affiliate, he's probably had a bunch of these guys already, so he knows them better than anyone else does.
Yep. And to your point, Mike, do you just take the season anyway? Like why hire a coach? You use an interim coach, even if I don't really know much about him, but even if he's great, at this point, do you just say, maybe we just tank the season? Let's just get out from under this mess. We regroup, we get a high draft pick for next year, and we try and start with the clean slate. Is that the better option? Because, I mean, they're already down, with the Hurricanes being 9-0-0 and them being 1-9. I mean, they're already at the bottom of the standings by a lot.
Yeah, their season's over already. You can't. I mean, we've been Hurricanes fans for a while. We've been off to starts like that, and we all know that the season's just done. When you're 10 games in, you got one win. There's no coming back from that. Teams are just too good in the league, and they're built too good for them to fail.
Well, it's what they say this about baseball, but it pretty much goes for all sports. You cannot win a championship in the first month, but you can sure take yourself out of the race in the first month. And that's what they did. Like there's no way. Yeah, they're kind of a lost cause right now. So
Exactly.
yeah, tough going to be a Hawk for sure.
It is.
You know what? Enough about the Hawks misery. Let's talk about some joy, and the joy that Mike gets being a Caniac and jerk like us. Tell us your story about following this team. Tell us all about it.
I was born in Hartford, Connecticut.
One of the chosen ones.
Yeah, so we were never called that, Ray.
I think of you that way. I
appreciate you, and I have known each other for a while, so I appreciate that. But no, I was born in Hartford, and I was raised right outside the city in a little town called Wethersfield. It's a little suburb of the city. Literally, the town right next to us was Hartford. I could see the state capitol, from our bedroom window if the leaves were off the trees. We were that close. So I went to my first game. My old man took me in 1983. I saw the Whalers against the Buffalo Sabres, I remember. It was back when Dave Andrechuk and Phil Housley and those guys were playing for Buffalo. And, they had Tom Barrasso was their goaltender, if I'm not mistaken. And Ronnie was a young guy. Sylvain Turgeon was a young guy. You know, it was a lot of fun being a Canes, Whalers fan at that point in time when you're young, because you have a professional sports team right down the street from your house.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
It was cool, but at the same time, though, we kept losing. So, it could only be but so much fun. At the time, being an hour and a half to Boston and an hour and a half to New York, we were kind of like the redheaded stepchildren, and everybody likes to say that we had a rivalry with the Bruins. We didn't, because they used to kill us all the time. A rivalry is when things are evenly matched. And, I never felt like it was a rivalry, unless it was fights in the stands. That was the only rivalry that we had going. So, that was about it. But, it was really, really nice, like having a team there, and being a Whalers fan, and, I followed them, and we had tickets, and we would go all the time. And, we're in high school and they have student rush, you go for like $8, you go to a game or whatever it may be. So it was always awesome. And, so fast forward to college, and I was accepted at a small school here in North Carolina called Chowan University. I went to school for graphic communications. They had one of the better programs in the country, and at a small school, and it was warmer here. So I was done with the cold weather of Connecticut. I was done with it. So I came down here, and I would go home my freshman year. I'd go home for fall break and then Christmas break. And then Carmanos pulled the rug out from underneath us, and said that they were done. So they moved down here to Greensboro. Myself and some of my buddies would make the trip, which was about a 4-hour drive for us, to the Greensboro Coliseum. Some of my friends were from Jersey and all that, and they were Devils fans, and we had some Flyers fans. So we would go to the games in Greensboro. We'd probably go to 2 or 3 for a couple of the years there. And then I settled in the Raleigh area, and it's kind of crazy. I wear my wear my Jeff O'Neill Hartford Whalers jersey pretty often into the arena, and I get crazy looks. It's not
beautiful.
It's not a throwback, because I despise the fact that the Canes wear Whalers merchandise still. So I'm an original, so I'm going to keep wearing it.
And you and I, as good as we are friends, with that, we differ only slightly on that. And I typically understand your frustration, and I want to delve into that a little bit, Mike. You know as well as I do, and the way we met on message boards and stuff like that. The love for the Whalers, then the move to not to Raleigh originally, but to North Carolina. And there was a huge divide, a very divisive type of, the fans in Hartford and in Connecticut just hated the fans who were welcoming the team coming to them, and vice versa. And it was going back and forth, and it was horrendous. I wanted to get your take on the whole thing, because my idea of the fact was, look, these players, you cheered for them for so many years. The enemy here is Carmanos. He's the guy that actually pulled the rug out, as you eloquently stated. And the players are just wearing different jerseys, but no one wanted to kind of go with them. There was a lot of people that just said, this team is dead to me now. And it's like, but you invested a lot of your sport fandom life cheering for these guys through terrible seasons, like you said. Like,
it was
very
rough.
different. There were some rough seasons, and you stayed with them through all of that. Now you're going to abandon them? I didn't get it. I wanted to get your take.
So it was a weird time, because a lot of, I was down here because I was in school here. But then, of course, I would go home during the summers, and it was very interesting hearing, most of it was directed toward Pete. Pete, still to this day, if Carmanos entered the state of Connecticut for a vacation on the Connecticut shore or whatever it might be, that's probably not a good place for him still.
No.
There is, that name is still, I mean, I still driving up to the arena, refuse to go down Peter Carmanos Drive. I go around and come in the other side of the building by the football stadium. I just won't do it. I think it's a joke that there's a street named after the guy in the first place. But, you know, my best friend and I, we talk about this often, and time has healed a lot of wounds there. And again, it was never a knock on the players. You know, the players were really good in the community in Hartford. They were really good at UConn Health Center with the children's hospitals and all that. They were they were outstanding community assets to have. But just the way that Carmanos did it, oh, if you guys get this many season tickets, we won't move. It was like he was completely holding the organization hostage, you know, and the city hostage. And, you know, just the way he did it was, you know, they hit their goals. They got the corporate support. The thing he was mad about, and I don't care what anybody says about this, he was that John Rowland, who was the governor at the time, met with Bob Kraft, and they were going to put a football stadium on the river for the New England Patriots. And he wasn't getting his new building, but this team was coming from Foxborough, Massachusetts into Hartford, and they were going to get a state-of-the-art building. And no one can ever tell me that wasn't the death nail right there. When the city of Hartford signed that deal with the Patriots, it was done. I mean, Carmanos said, no, we're not playing this game. If they're going to give them a new arena and they just want to retrofit the Civic Center, no, we're not going to do that. We're out of here. You know, he had to say the right things, but I definitely think that had everything to do with it.
Wow.
So to chime in real quick, Mike, growing up, I liked the Whalers, but I wasn't a huge Whalers fan. So when the team announcer moved, I was on board day one, you know, May 1997. I'm 100% in. And I remember back then the big thing was the ESPN message boards. And it was the most toxic place to be, you know, a fan of a brand new team, because it was just Whalers fans and new Hurricanes fans just going at it. And initially I was turned off. I'm like, oh my gosh, these Whalers fans are just can't stand them. And I got onto, I think, one of the early real message boards I got onto, and it might have been one even that Ray and I were on together. It went through a lot of iterations. I think Fan Home, you know, one closed and we all went to the next one and we all went to the next one. But I found a few guys. Greensboro Hurricanes is one username that stands out, who was like, you know, let me give you our perspective. Let me give you a Whalers fans perspective on this. And guys like that totally changed my perception of it now. And I've really gone back and tried to learn about Whalers history. I've really become a fan and a proponent of acknowledging that, which Peter Carmanos was so against. I can remember those early years in Carolina when they would talk about, you know, Hurricanes records. They did that in such a way that they were completely ignoring anything that had been done prior to 97. It was swept off the board. These are Hurricanes records. And I hated it so much because I feel like there are a lot of folks like you and Ray who, like you said, over time, you know, there's that initial pain and it was really about Carmanos, but these are the players we like. And this is, you know, it's a different team, but it's the same team. And I feel like there's so many people that are in that kind of gray area that I like to hear your perspective. You're the first person in, you know, 20 years that I've heard bring up the New England Patriots angle. I think I've read about that before, but I think you're the first person who said, I think this had an influence in it, which is really interesting to me.
So Governor Rowland, who ended up spending time in jail, the guy was one of the most corrupt politicians on the planet. First of all, he didn't do us any favors as far as the Whalers or the Patriots goes. You know, he was the guy at the negotiating table, and that was, yeah, that's not the guy who you needed. And turns out we thought we had the slam dunk and home run with the one. Turns out we had neither one at the end of the day, you know. But the thing still to this day that bugs me, I love Tom Dundon. I love what Tom Dundon has done for the organization, but I wish Tom Dundon would get a history lesson on the Hartford Whalers instead of just seeing the cash grab of the whale tail being sold in the eye and wearing the color rush jersey or whatever it was called last year that was gray, that the Whalers never had any gray in their color, what in their uniforms whatsoever, except for a little accent, in the late 90s jerseys. But if you're going to sell a jersey, a Hartford Whalers jersey in your pro shop, you need to put number 2, number 9, number 19 up in the rafters. Yeah, you need to retire you need to retire the numbers that were originally retired while the Hartford Whalers were there. Ulf Samuelsson, they retired his number way after the fact. It's like, that shouldn't have been done. That was done as a favor to Ron Francis. But at the end of the day, either you're all in or you're all out on it. And I still don't think that, Brad, to kind of make your point on it, like the history of the organization, I still don't think is being told, because those numbers aren't being held from the rafters. I hated seeing Dougie Hamilton skate down the ice in number 19. I was like, that should be in the rafters. If we're going to go all in on the Whalers stuff, then we got to go all in on the Whalers stuff. So just the way I feel about it.
And Mike, you know what? I'm with you. When the announcement came, I was thoroughly delighted, because I saw it as, before any statement was made or before I saw any comments from the organization itself, I thought of it as an acknowledgement of the history of where you're from. And that's how I saw it immediately. Now, look, I may have been born on a turnip truck, but it wasn't the one that rolled in last night. I know that there was a cash grab aspect to it. And I think you're 100% right. You're 100% right. If you're going to acknowledge your history, fully acknowledge it. You take it all in, like you said, raise it to the rafters and stuff like that. And that's a reasonable request from fans who had made the transition from one team to the next. I didn't have, I never got a chance to see a game in the Civic Center. Now, look, I did the traveling from Northern Alberta into Edmonton, into Calgary when the Whalers were coming through. I always tried to be there, even as a kid. I mean, I got to sit behind the bench and have Peter Sidorkiewicz sign my jersey while he was backing up Mike Liute. And I was sitting right behind the Whalers, which I got to say, guys, if you get tickets to a game, don't sit right behind the bench. You don't get a chance to see the game itself. Yep. But I was young then. I didn't care about that. Ron Francis was right there. Peter Sidorkiewicz is sitting right beside me. This is unbelievable. I was thoroughly I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. But man, oh man, you're right. I mean, there's those wounds. I didn't have the wounds that the people like you did. You were there in the Civic Center. You had a chance to watch those games and stuff, and that hurts. That hurts seeing your team leave.
Yeah. Oh, it did. And the thing about it is, right, is that we were like the lovable losers. It's like Hartford is not a big market. It's not a big media market. It's not a big sports market. We have UConn Huskies basketball. That's what Connecticut is known for. Still to this day, women's and men. We win championships. That's what we do. And it's like, you look, and like I said, you're an hour and a half from Boston. Well, we all know what Boston's like for professional sports, because other than the Bruins, I love all the other Boston teams. Well, then you go an hour and a half south to New York. Well, we know what New York is like. Well, then here in the middle, you got little tiny Hartford, and they're the team where, they were the team that, came across with Edmonton and everybody, into the NHL. And, we were never great. We had that one year, was it 86, 87, I guess, when we won the Adams division. Should have beaten Montreal that year.
Oh, Yvonne Corvo.
Yeah,
Yvonne Corvo beat Roy clean and put it off the crossbar, and Courtnall goes down the other end in overtime and scores. That one hurt so much, because Corvo beat Roy like a rented mule, just clean. It was a beautiful and just clank. And it's the worst sound ever. I still have PTSD about that. Let me tell you.
some of my friends and we still talk. If that goal goes in by Corvo, the Whalers are still in Hartford.
I believe that 100%. I believe that 100%. And then I think was it 88 or 89, the game 7 loss to Boston. Another
Boston.
season where the Whalers looked great. And there were actually some who were predicting that the Whalers could come out of the East, that they had a
Yes.
squad that good, and they just couldn't get it done. I think they were shut out in game 7, 3-0, if I recall correctly, and
Yep.
just couldn't beat Boston. Of course, Boston is the team that goes all the way against and ends up against the Oilers
Yep.
in that. And look, the Hurricanes and Oilers, I was in northern Alberta when that happened, and that was a glorious thing. I couldn't even imagine what it would have been like to have the Whalers coming to Edmonton to play in the Stanley Cup, in Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton, and me being the only Whalers fan in the arena, because I would have found a way to get in there. I mean, that would have been just amazing, right?
And it would have been crazy with two WHL teams, playing for the Stanley Cup.
Even better. What a
Yeah.
great point that is, Mike. My goodness.
It's like, come on, that's that's like bringing teams, from back, in the ABA days with the NBA, when they merged, the New Jersey Nets and those guys coming in. It's just, we don't. Those days are long since done. The leagues are established now. There won't be any leagues that merge in with any of these major leagues anymore. But that would have been a lot of fun to see. But it's I love being a Canes fan. This city has really embraced hockey. The arena is fantastic. I wish it were downtown. I'm sitting right here on Fayetteville Street right now downtown, and I'm like, man, all these bars and all this and that would be great to go to before a game. But we got our tailgate. But the city's done a great job. The more and more people that move here from hockey communities, the youth hockey is getting huge in Raleigh. I mean, it's a hockey town. I didn't know if I would ever say that, guys. I honestly don't, but Raleigh is 100% a hockey town.
I can remember, Mike. So I was at NC State at the time when they moved. I can remember driving out to Green Acres. The upper deck is all blacked out in curtains. And, you couldn't even buy tickets in the upper deck. There weren't enough people. That wasn't concerned. And I can remember back then that the guys I went with, and the people that I knew, and for us, we felt almost like we were part of something special. Like we knew something nobody else knew. We were Hurricanes fans. People would be like, oh, you have a team, or who are the Hurricanes? What do they play? And we felt like we were part of something kind of special and secretive, and it was kind of us against the world. And I agree with you. I grew up at 2.5 hours or so west of Raleigh. Family still lives there, and it used to be I would talk to my dad, and he'd be like, "Oh, we don't get any Hurricanes coverage, just north of Charlotte there," and it was in part because North Carolina is a big state. I take a lot of ribbing. I live in Boston now. My boss used to work in Charlotte temporarily, and she's like, I never heard about the Hurricanes. I'm like, well, of course you didn't, because from Raleigh to Charlotte is, that's like going from Hartford to New York City or Hartford to Boston. That's another territory. But now, 3 years in a row in the playoffs, and I noticed my dad is sending me articles, Charlotte Observer, talking about the Hurricanes, and I think particularly has become a hockey town, and North Carolina is starting to become a hockey state. I don't know if the whole state's there yet, but we're starting to see that it's not just that triangle area that's into hockey, or the people who we converted in Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point. It's starting to spread. Like it's as the team has gotten better, and they're fun to watch now is a big part of that. Now, even when we lose, I'm like, oh my God, did you see what those guys did on the ice tonight? Like, this is just fun to watch. And I feel like the state is really starting to embrace as a whole. You mentioned driving from Murfreesboro, which for those of you listening who don't know how far that is from Greensboro, he said 4 hours. And on a map, it doesn't look that long. It is a long, long trip. It takes longer to drive from one end of North Carolina to the other than it does for me to drive from Boston to Raleigh. That's how big the state is. It's a big state, folks. And so I think we're seeing more people in those kind of outlying areas that are starting to pick up. I have some friends in places like Wilson, which, that's only an hour and a half or so from Raleigh, but they're starting to be like, oh, dude, like I got an 11 game plan. People are starting to make that commitment to the team. And one of the things that I would love to see, I think Ray would love to see, is I really liked your point about, if the team is going to embrace the Whalers, go all in, go whole hog, so to speak. And let's put some numbers in the rafters. Let's maybe craft some information, put a section on the website about the Whalers. Like let's teach people about this. And I really think that would be a positive, because I see people who were never Whalers fans and they buy in the jerseys, and that's great for the team. I'm glad the team's getting the money, but I'm with you. I think, I want to see people get more that, I want it to be more than just, I'm going to put Sebastian Aho's number and name on a Whalers jersey. Like I want it to be deeper than that for folks, because I know through the people I've met who have been Whalers fans and who are now Caniacs, I've really gotten a deeper appreciation, I should say, for the Whalers. I'll never have the appreciation that you or Ray would have, because I just didn't grow up with that. But I would love to see more people embrace that and really catch on, because there's so many cool things, that we could still take and learn from the Whalers that they just did right. And the history there, like you mentioned, some of the people that have, they retired. You mentioned McKenzie earlier, 19, Gordie Howe. I'm sure there are Caniacs out there who know who Gordie Howe is, but may or may not realize that he, played for the Whalers. Starting to ramble, but I just wanted to agree that I think Raleigh is a hockey town, and I think North Carolina is becoming a hockey state.
Yeah, it's always funny, because I always laughed, and I always said Justin Williams shouldn't have been wearing number 11, and Jordan Stiles still should not be wearing number 11, and I laughed. I asked the question one time of Chuck Caton, and I asked him, I said, Chuck, should Kevin Dineen's number be retired by this organization?
Damn
and
right.
he said to me, without a doubt. He said, there's no question that Kevin Dineen should have a number 11 in the rafters. And it is now in the Hartford Civic Center. Again, it was after the Whalers left, of course, they put it up there on a Whalers night one night with the Hartford Wolfpack team that plays with the Rangers AHL affiliate. But he's another guy. I mean, he was the first captain of the Carolina Hurricanes in North Carolina. And
yes, he was.
Last player to score a goal for the Whalers, the first Hurricane to score as well. It was right. I mean, you're 100% right. Like, damn rights, Kevin Dineen deserves his number in the rafters. No question.
I mean, Ray, I know that Ron Francis is your guy. That's your dude.
The sun rises and sets on him.
I was always a Dineen guy. I was always a Kevin Dineen guy growing up. He was a power forward before there was like a power forward position in the NHL. Before there was a Keith Primo or an Eric Lindros or one of those type of guys. He was a smaller guy, but Jesus, that dude threw his body around. He could score. He could play defensively. He was just
gritty.
And I hate the word great. I think people throw the word great around way too often when it comes to the athletes. This dude was a great hockey player. Whereas if he were playing in New York, Boston, Montreal, Edmonton at the time, there's no doubt he's a Hall of Fame hockey player. There's no doubt.
I'm with you. I love what he brought to the ice like every night for the Whalers, and what he was doing and translating into Raleigh. He made that transition, and I was like, when I found out that he scored the first goal for the Hurricanes, I was overjoyed. You couldn't have scripted a better person to be the guy to score the first goal for the Hurricanes. You just couldn't.
It would have been impossible to. I mean, that last game against I think it was Tampa Bay. I think was the last Whalers game that they had, and him scoring that last goal and him being the last guy off the ice, and everybody in the crowd crying and all of that. And here's Kevin, and he was in tears too, because he loved Hartford. I mean, he was Mr. Whaler. I mean, he left and he came back. And it's just. He was just that guy. He was the guy who was the face of the franchise. And, I never felt he's gotten his due respect for being the face of the franchise.
one of my most prized possessions. I had fans from the message board find a way to get me a pair of tickets to the second final game in the Civic Center. The second last game. It wasn't the last game. I didn't imagine I was going to get tickets to that one or whatever, but I
Yeah,
wanted some sort of piece of that. I wasn't there, but it's one of my most prized possessions is tickets to that second last game and stuff because it meant so much. And knowing they were moving, look, it hurt, but it didn't stop me from staying with the team. You know what I mean? Like that was
exactly.
just all of those players that you just adored and cheered for so hard in all those years, lean friggin' years, like
Very
lean
lean.
years. Holy cow, there were some tough ones there, but it was fun and enjoyable. And I mean, the thing about and you everyone we were both talking about the fans in North Carolina and Raleigh. I made a trip to my pilgrimage to the Holy Land 12 years ago, and I tell everyone that I run into, if you want to see a game, if you want to go somewhere in the States and watch a game, you go to Raleigh and interact with the fans. The fans are unbelievable, like
It's
friendly. I got down there and they did the tailgating and stuff like that that I had never experienced in my life. They did up a tailgate that friends had told me was as big as the ones they were doing in 2006 for the Stanley Cup. They were massive. Everyone was there. People walking by who were cheering for the other team, like cheering for the Capstra. They were inviting people in. Hey, come have a drink with us. Let's talk hockey. I mean, that is the type of fan that is in Raleigh, and it makes the experience that much better.
Are all Caniacs diehard, hockey fans? Not necessarily. I would say those same people are diehard Hurricanes fans. And
right.
as we move forward, just like we've said, it takes time. And we've had a 9-year drought. And I don't care what team you are. I live in Boston. I've lived in Boston for 15 years now. And I can remember when I first moved up here, the Hurricanes were outdrawing the Boston Bruins because Boston was bad.
Yep.
Winning brings people back, and the atmosphere on top of winning and the style of hockey on top of winning, it's such a great experience. I'm clearly biased, but I would agree with Ray. I've been to 4 or 5 arenas now, maybe 6, and there is nothing like showing up to a Saturday afternoon game 3 or 4 hours early, and there's food, there's kids playing, everybody's getting along. There's no conflict, there's no drama, and it's an all-day party, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's I've got family and friends who come into town, and whenever they do, we go to a game. And everybody always says, they're like, man, uh, and I don't know if they're so jokingly saying this or if they're for real saying this. They're like, wow, I can see why they left Hartford. The arena's great. The tailgate's awesome. People are cool. They're like, everything is perfect to go to a game, and, again, getting back to what I said earlier, I'm a fan of a downtown arena. But it's funny, my friends who live up there and they have a downtown arena, they like the fact that the arena is out on the outskirts of the city, which is kind of different. I mean, Brad, you're in Boston. I mean, it's right there at the Zachem. And you're like,
It's
all
brutal.
right, it is.
If
It
you
is.
live in Boston, it is wonderful. You can hop on the T, you can grab
Yep.
a cab, you can Uber, whatever it is, you can be there. I live as the crow flies about 12 miles from Boston. I can see Boston. If I walk at my front door, I can see this, I can see the Hancock, I can see the Peru. But for me to go in and park, okay, well, that's $55.
Yep.
For me to go and take the T, good luck getting a ride on the T to get there in time, unless you want to be at the game a couple hours early and get home a couple hours late. So that's not really an option. And pricing is hard everywhere, but the fact that it's a downtown arena, like I said, if you're in Boston, it's great travel-wise and stuff. I do think it drives up the prices. I lived off of Durley Road when I lived in Raleigh, so
Sure.
the arena's location for me was great because we popped on Durley. I was at the arena in 5 minutes most nights.
You're right there. Yeah.
And I loved it, but I could see that Raleigh has changed so much in the 15 years that I've been gone that there's a lot more going on downtown that didn't really exist when they were starting to redevelop downtown when I left. And I really haven't kept up all that much with how much has gone on, but I could see where a downtown arena would be really cool to have, especially if you could get there from NC State. That's me being a state boy, but if you could get there, if it's somewhere down Hillsborough or something where you can kind of walk down there, or it's a 5-minute Uber, I think that's fantastic. But having it out by the state fairgrounds gives you the room to do the tailgating. You're not bothering anybody with noise. You're not going to get, noise complaints at 11 o'clock at night after a big win. You can kind of stay up there and kind of hang out and party a little bit and have a good time. And it's because there's land. I mean, it's because there's space. You can't tailgate at a Bruins game. There's no such thing.
No.
Not going to happen.
Now, I do think, though, that if Mr. Dundon has his way, I think that within the next, 10 to 15 years, there will be a new building in downtown Raleigh. I think that's his. I think that'd be his goal down by Red Hat Amphitheater there, down by South Saunders Street, that area where where they've got that land available down there. There's a lot of rumbles about that, and granted, our arena is still excellent. I still think it's one of the better arenas going that I've been to.
Beautiful.
I just think though that he wants to be closer to that downtown area, and I think there's a lot of businesses who would really enjoy that pregame quote unquote tailgate inside of their bars and restaurants,
Yeah,
so,
I hear you there. We talk about how much and how great the fans are. The Hurricanes this season, in the past week, have been putting out a lot for us to feel good about. Let's recap the week, shall we? And really not much to recap other than that one game in Chicago. And Brad and I had a chance to talk about the loss of Nino Niederreiter, who we thought, that's going to hurt, but there's a next man up theory, and the next man up was Seth Jarvis. And man, oh man, I mean, did he jumped in, assist in his first game, and then scores a beautiful goal to get the Hurricanes back in the game against Chicago when they're down 3-1. Let's talk about Seth Jarvis and his arrival in the spotlight. What do you think, Mike? How was he?
So I was wrong about Seth Jarvis. I'll be the first. Well, I'm not so sure I was wrong about Seth Jarvis, because I think Seth Jarvis is going to be a very good NHL player. I still am on the bubble on if I want to continue to see Seth Jarvis in Raleigh this year or not. I'm not sure I want to burn a year of his entry-level deal right yet. Now I say that, and then I will also say that the way that Brind'Amour uses his lines, putting Jarvis on the fourth line isn't like truly having a fourth line. He's getting a lot of ice time. He's getting special teams minutes, and the kid fits. I mean, he needs to get a little bit bigger, but the kid is still a teenager, for Christ's sakes,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, his skill set is really, really nice. Like watching him and seeing his hands that he's got, and he just seems to know where to be at each time. And even when he's playing fourth line minutes, with Martinook and Lawrence and those guys, the kid just fits even right there. You don't think of him as a fourth line guy. You think of him as a skilled, power play guy who's going to put, 20 pucks to 25 pucks in the net every year. And he's just fit so far. So I don't know anymore. I don't know if if Nino's healthy, I don't know. I really don't. It's a good problem to have.
It's an amazing problem to have. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry to cut you off, Ray. I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. One is Seth Jarvis does not play hockey like a teenager. He plays like somebody who's got a couple of years of NHL experience under his belt. He makes good decisions, and that was my one concern. Talent was not a concern coming in this year. Maturity, his ability to see the ice, and he does that not as well as maybe like, an Aho Teravainen combo, but he does it way better than I would imagine any other rookie to do. we still have 7 games. After tonight, it'll be 6 games before that, that contract kicks in. And I'm kind of thinking the same way maybe that you are, is if Nino's healthy, let's not burn through Jarvis. Let's not keep Jarvis up just to keep him up. If Nino's healthy, get Nino back in the lineup, let Jarvis go down and just roll through the WHA or the WHL. But if we need him, we need him. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But if we don't need him, let's, this is not the same situation. But, if he can be our Kucherov and we don't need him, then let's not use him. Let's sit on it. Let's let the kid get a year better, and he's going to be that much more impactful next year.
And that's such an important question. And to go to the next man up theory, does the team, let's say for argument's sake, that Nino's not ready to go by the end of those 9 games? Would you shuffle Seth down for this season to pull the next guy up to see if they can fill in and see what you've got there, knowing that Nino's coming back eventually in respect to maintaining that contract? Or do you hold on to Seth and say, dude, you're the man?
I honestly, and I think that we got guys in Norfolk that can play at the NHL level as a 3rd/4th line player. I just think that we got a couple of depth guys down there that would be all right. Where Jarvis sets himself apart from guys who are in the AHL is the power play. Yep. I think his ability on the power play is going to make him a lot of money in his career. I just do. He can play low. I'd assume he could play at the point if you wanted him to, the way he moves a puck around. That to me, right, is where I think that the decision is going to fall. Like I said, can he be replaced in the regular lineup? Yeah. I mean, the guy playing 4th line minutes, 12 minutes a night, whatever, you can find guys like that in Norfolk, but that power play unit is one of the best in the league right now. And having him as one of your, top 10 guys on a power play unit as a teenager is pretty freaking frightening. So
frightening and awesome, right? Like, and yeah. What I loved that Rod threw him in there, identified his skill and said, you know what? Hey, kid, we're going to shine the light on you. Not only are we going to shuffle you around and you'll play 3rd line, 4th, we'll throw you on the 2nd line every now and again, and we're going to give you power play minutes. It is that type of jolt of belief that Seth is just going to feed on and love, right? Like, I mean, that type of belief from your coach who says, you're the man, you can do this, get it done, and instant rewards from Jarvis.
Yeah. Yep. He could be an X factor. He really could. I mean, and, but like Brad said, I mean, I went into the season thinking, okay, you've got some guys getting a little bit older with the Stahls and the Martinooks and, those guys, but you've got like the Suzukis and the Jarvises coming and guys like that, and you're like, man, this could be pretty good here, for a while. We could stretch out this run for a while if these young kids turn out to be something a couple of years down the line. I didn't expect a couple of years down the line was the 2021-2022 season for Seth Jarvis.
Absolutely.
Oh, you nailed it. Goodness. Mike, I know we're kind of running out of time here real quick, but what I do want to touch on is the puck is just getting ready to get dropped here. Canes and Panthers. And of course, 2 teams at the top of the NHL right now. Did anyone think the Hurricanes and Panthers would be at the top of the league after 10 games? Not I. I wanted it for the Hurricanes, but I sure didn't see the Panthers being up here with us. And how important is this game to win? Is this like, do we have to have these points to say solidify the belief in the Hurricanes from around the league?
I don't think so. I'd rather take an L to Florida than take one to Arizona last week. we're a much
Good point.
better team than Arizona. Those are the games you have to win. When it's a team that is much, much, much below you, you've got to win those games because those are the points that kill you at the end of the season that you don't have. A loss to Florida, I mean, that what I see, they were number 2 or number 3 in the power rankings on ESPN this week. So I mean, you're gonna lose a game at some point, lose to a strong team. Maybe that might knock off a little bit of the hey, we're so great type of deal and get them all fired up again to get back at it.
Good call. Brad, I know you want to jump in on this one. This is a big game that we looked at last week and said that there's a good chance we're going to be unbeaten going into this game. We are unbeaten going into this game as we thought we would be. Talk about the importance of this one.
I think this is huge. I really like Mike's take on it. If you lose to this Florida team, there's no shame in that whatsoever.
There it is. You know what? I'm looking forward to this one. I'll be excited. And Mike, you mentioned everything. You kind of drove the point home for us. We talked about trap games, and that Arizona game looked like a trap game, was playing like a trap game until the Canes woke up in the third and put it away. And you run into hot goaltenders all the time. And there's not many more much hotter than Bobrovsky. Bob's been fierce. He's turning pucks aside everywhere.
I mean, he's got the history too. I mean, he's been good for years. There's a reason he got that contract from Florida a couple of years ago. The guy's been a stud for, almost a decade, I guess. Right. He's been that good. I mean, we see where Columbus is at now after Bobrovsky left, I mean, it's like, their goaltending isn't that good anymore, and so they're not good anymore, technically. But I mean, they've built a good team down there. That team for a while there, they've drafted well. They were run well. They did the right thing with Quenneville. They originally didn't do the right thing with them, but then they did at the end of the day. So they're being managed a lot better than what they were previously in previous years. So, I mean, it looks like they're going in the right direction. Same with Tampa. Those Florida teams are pretty damn good. There's now only if people would show up to watch them down there, that'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, no kidding. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. My goodness, this has been one of my favorites, not just because of all the reminiscing you did. I mean, you brought up a very painful memory for me with the Habs beating the Whalers like that. I mean, you brought that up. So, but I forgive you because, hey, you are as good as they get. A brother from another mother, a super fan. I love you to death, man. I'm so glad you joined us. And I hope sometime in the future, we'll be able to have you back because you have the hockey acumen that makes these podcasts great.
Hey, let's do it again anytime. I'd love it. This has been, what's it been, an hour and 15 minutes, and it's flown by really quickly.
It hasn't it?
I'd love to do it for another hour and 15 minutes. So we'll do it again sometime for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Mike, again, thanks. You enjoy the concert, get some grub, have some fun. We'll be cheering extra hard in your stead while you're enjoying the music. We'll be cheering hard for the Hurricanes. Such a pleasure to have you aboard, man.
Oh, I'll have the ESPN app open for sure in the meantime during the show. I never leave too far from that.
Awesome, outstanding. Love it. This has been so great.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
it was
boys.
a pleasure to meet you.
It.
Excellent. I think the only thing left to say is go Canes.
Go
That's
Canes.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We would do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.